Welcome to another edition of Global Conversations, the podcast where we uncover unique perspectives on the world's most pressing issues. I'm your host, Andre Darmanin, and each week I bring on influential guests who are redefining the future of their industries and challenging conventional wisdom. In today's episode, we dive into the nuanced topic of gender and career challenges, exploring how individuals navigate these complexities in our ever-evolving global working environment. Joining us today is Maria Peralta, Senior Manager, Business Development of European Merchant Sales and Acquiring. Maria will enlighten us on the significant realities surrounding gender implications in the workplace and how to address the career obstacles that are associated with them. As Maria takes us through her story, we'll also be discussing practical strategies for fostering gender equity, the importance of mentorship and career growth, and how organizations can contribute to a more inclusive working culture. We'll hear firsthand of Maria's experiences in confronting gender stereotypes, breaking through barriers, and uplifting others in her journey. By sharing these enriching conversations, we hope this episode sparks thought, provokes dialogue, and inspires listeners to become agents of change within their respective fields. So whether you're on your way to work, or a relaxing stroll, or just taking a break, gear up for an incredible dive into this illuminating topic of gender, career challenges, and also telling her story about, her relocation journey. So here we go. So Maria, thanks for joining us today. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to do this today. So welcome.
Thank you so much, Andrea. I'm very happy to be here today and with the audience.
I did a little bit of an introduction about yourself. So why don't you tell everyone about who you are? Just tell your story as to, why you got into the field that you did, your journey, all of that.
Absolutely. So yeah, everyone, as Andre said, I'm Maria Peralta. I am originally from Colombia, from South America. So perhaps kind of an interesting kind of way of seeing, and something that I perhaps haven't shared with many people, is that I never thought I will be here, meaning in Europe or doing what I do today. I never thought I will go through university, like just starting from there. And I think everything that has happened to me is like never in my wildest dreams I thought I will kind of achieve what I've achieved so far. So, I studied in a normal school, but my parents went through a bit of an economic crisis at some point. So we had a bit of a juggle into getting into school certain years. I had like 6 months where I was not studying because we couldn't pay for the let's say tuition. In Colombia, unfortunately, education is very expensive. And once I kind of finalized my like school studies, then like my mom just went running and tried to find me a scholarship, and we actually managed to do that. So I studied marketing. And when I graduated, I did work in a couple of places, and then I went to the travel industry, which was my dream job, to work for an airline back in Colombia. And I started kind of growing in the airline, and then I had the opportunity to actually travel and live abroad and work for an organization, an alliance of airlines in Germany. And I kind of just out of the super exciting thought of doing it, I just went on it, and I didn't realize what the implications were of kind of changing from Colombia, Latinity, warmth to Germany, all process driven, very organized, a lot of opportunities, but still a completely different culture. But the benefit was that I was working for a very international company. I could still speak in English. Everything was kind of relatively welcoming and okay. And then I changed to my current job, where it was a office where it was much more kind of, let's say, unified and more like German in its culture. And that was kind of my first shock into kind of actually moving to a culture that was not mine. But again, I think it's been great. The journey has been a bit of a crazy, like wiggly career. And I've gotten to a place that I'm very proud of, and I want to share that with you.
Story that you told. I mean, coming from Colombia, going to Germany, switching industries, if you will. And, we'll get into more of that. But I mean, this is, the career journeys are never straight. We hear this, very, very frequently. And, especially whether it's my industry where I moved from planning to HR, you've done the same thing from working in the airlines to finance. So, I mean, these are interesting times, and these are things that are, that we'd like to uncover throughout our conversation. So, I know you spoke about yourself a little bit in detail in terms of your challenges, your successes, etc. But is there something that is usual or an interesting and unusual fact about yourself that people wouldn't regularly know about you?
Yeah, well, I think perhaps that I hated sales. It's something that I would have never imagined myself. And I remember kind of making fun of people that did sales. And at the end, I realized like this is pretty much what I've done in one way or another in my career. But then again, of course, the soft skills that you learn throughout different industries are transferable, but it is indeed different when you move from one industry to another. So I learned to love it, but again, you have to learn how to do it when you change for industry to the other. You have to be so well versed on what you're selling so that you can kind of inspire that trust in your counterpart. But it's also from a way of kind of putting it in parallel between what is required to sell something and sell yourself. You really have to kind of also find confidence in who you are to kind of be strong enough to portray that and inspire that in the other person.
No.
So,
That's good to know, especially considering how you had that. I don't know if you want to say hate or disdain, they might be strong words, but I mean, now all of a sudden it's like, yeah, this is what I'm doing, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people who think like that, and it's you can never imagine how you get into the work that you do, and that's an interesting kind of conversation, especially when when you're trying to be more open and about where your career goes and how you get there, and your journey is never static, if you will. So, as we move forward here, I'm just I'm thinking about our conversations in the past and how we met. So for the audience, Maria and I were both part of the Rise Up and Amplify cohorts at Money 2020. I did have a conversation earlier with another Latina, if you will, Kathy Vasquez Camiotek. She's So it's funny how these conversations surround Latinas and Latinx and Latine populations. So I find that fascinating and coincidental, if you will. So and as we spoke about our journeys through the program itself, you had mentioned to me something about the lessons that you've learned during your journey, and how you've been able to apply it to your career so far. So to provide that experience and your experience in that through Money 2020, et cetera. So tell me a little bit more about that journey, if you will, from Money 2020 until now, at least.
Yes, definitely. I think it gave me a completely different perspective on something that I thought was very transactional. So Money 2020, especially in the programs we were at, or we were kind of sharing our journeys and meeting people, we kind of actually networked. We just basically lived networking all this time, but I kind of discovered the power of networking beyond the transactional piece. So actually just really making connections, getting to know people, listening to their journey, empathizing, kind of understanding, oh, that person lived that. Perhaps I thought they would have never lived that because of their background, because of who they seem to be, but they actually went through a lot of the struggles that I went. So that power of just creating connections, making you feel better, not necessarily for that person will give me a job or would recommend me, which is perhaps the prejudice that I had of what networking was for. and also had the chance to connect people from my network to some of the people that I met in Money 2020, and have much more of this kind of sideline conversations of things that were deeper and meaningful, and just get like acquainted with people that I would have never met otherwise,
No,
including
that's,
you. So
that was
great.
great. And, we both have interesting stories. I mean, obviously this is all about you here, and listening to your story in terms of this work. So, we talk about the gender imbalances, the gender conversations, and of course with you, with your story, putting it all a little bit full circle here, in the sense that, your career journey hasn't been static, and you've moved from different countries, different cultures, and etc. And I know that, living in North America, we see that race plays a huge role in in conversations within equity, diversity, inclusion, and more so as a whole. But but I see that gender takes a lot of the conversation, especially within the EU. So in your experience, do you find that both are just as equal, or do you find that gender is more of a conversation, especially played out in leadership circles? So what have you noticed in your experience?
Yeah. Yeah, well, my experience, I will have to kind of divide it into the, like, while I was living in my native country, and then when I moved. So back in Colombia, when I started my professional journey, to be honest, I have to say, I don't know if I was privileged, probably I was, in the circles that I was moving. I didn't see kind of any like particular discrimination professionally towards women, nor I felt discriminated. I didn't have it in my mind, in my thought, at least back then, no? So that was kind of my personal experience, not wanting to kind of generalize, because of course many people might have had a different kind of situation. When I came to Germany, actually I was quite in shock, because I thought, thinking of Angela Merkel in Germany, I thought, oh, this is the place for women to be. And I was surprised. There were not many women in managerial positions. I actually saw a difference between Colombia and Germany. And then I started to look into stats, and I saw that in the International Labor Organization, that they have some stats of how many managers are women, and Colombia and many Latin countries were actually up or higher than some European countries, which I thought it was more from perhaps depending on how developed that country was, and it doesn't seem to be joined up. And then again, I started thinking perhaps it's a culture. In some countries, perhaps matriarchy is a bit more pronounced. Again, I wouldn't go into the details of why, but what I did do was I joined the Women Network, ERG, within my company currently. And I decided, I want to kind of talk to women, understand what they're going through, what's their challenges, or why are they not finding opportunities. And what I found, like, as a common thread was the difficulty to self-advocate, the feeling that if I don't meet all the requirements within a particular job ad, I just would not apply. And also kind of related a lot with something that I actually felt, and I'm still struggling and working on that, is that culturally also from my hometown is being humble is good. No, don't brag. Don't talk about your successes too much. And I think for women was a bit stronger on that line. So like the one thing that I was very proud of being part of was in this network, and being able to do kind of different activities to help not only women, but everybody, because again, this is cross gender, to kind of feel comfortable in talking about their successes in their performance review, in whatever. And one thing is being, self-confident, but it shouldn't translate into bad behavior against women, against anybody else, just because I have been successful. No, you have to be consequent with still being empathic and treating others well, but there's nothing wrong with being confident. So that was kind of my path in gender, um, and what I've felt that perhaps just realized that it was a topic that perhaps I never talked about. Yeah, and that's the evolution that I see. I'm not sure if it was that in Colombia things were better, but I think things were not discussed. That I can tell you. I think these topics are now less taboo and things are being kind of openly, everybody's talking about it. It's okay. Let's discuss. Let's see what we can do. And just to kind of wrap up on the race side, I think like currently in the situation that we're in, the world that we're living in, I think it touches everybody. And again, I'm Latin, so I'm in Europe. I'm not fully one of them, maybe if I may say that. But I would say that in that topic, I would highlight that the most difficult thing is inclusion and belonging. I think of all the things that I've experienced, that I think is the hardest to reach, to knowing that you're not, you were not born here, or perhaps your parents are not from here, and your culture is different. Being fully part of the ecosystem of that culture
and
is quite complicated.
Thinking about your earlier comment and the earlier part of the conversation about your how you grew up, your upbringing, etc., and with your fighting for the scholarship, your mother running around to find that out. What I've noticed in the differences between South American countries and maybe Western countries, or maybe even if you want to get into really specifics about European countries, Nordic countries, etc., is that class seems to be a huge issue, in South America versus, more different industrialized economies, if you will. And correct me if I'm wrong. Is that where you see the differences too, outside of gender, and also to the politics? Because it seems like, I just saw that there was, there's been a couple of female presidents elect, or female presidents elected in various countries in South America. So there's the equality of women in South America versus what you see here, the patriarchy that exists and all that. So, in your mind, is that what you think the differences are that you see?
Yes, definitely. I think that the gaps between classes, or how to move upwards, like, the mobility across classes, is quite difficult. I think the difference between perhaps like the poverty levels are completely different compared to kind of the Western, the European or North American countries. And especially, I would say, access to education is clearly a problem, because in many countries, like in Germany, it's almost like it's free, even like higher education, and it's quite high quality. But for in other countries, you have to pay for that education, and that limits the possibility of you kind of, getting the tools and going upwards. I think there are many things that are changing, and of course, even without education, you can make it in life. I'm not saying that is the absolute way of doing it.
Definitely. And
but it is a
this
struggle,
is something that,
for sure.
Within our professions, they are a conversation that we need to have, and people need to understand that there's global challenges, if you will. It's not a one size fits all situation. It's how do you uplift people regardless of their class, their gender. Social mobility is critical.
Absolutely.
So is gender equity, so is racial equity, et cetera, et cetera. So, now let's move back to the conversation about mentorship, and even more so sponsorship. And, fine, we've had the conversations about Money 2020 and what that did for you, your experiences, et cetera. But one thing that you had mentioned to me, in our side conversation prior to this was, you have 3 mentors. So, some people just have one. Some people have a struggle to even have just one, because for whatever reason, one way or another, they don't have one. So, why 3? And how would you compare compare those three, and how are they different from each other, and how has it helped your career journey, if you will?
We're saying. So there was one that my land manager suggested. The other
Mm-hmm.
one was through Money 2020. So as you know, you also have a mentor. And the other one was through a program of the organization. So I actually, at one point, I really was kind of super eager to write and reach out to somebody. But at the end of the day, I just managed to get three. And something that I learned in this diversity leadership course that I was just mentioning is that finding a mentor is
Mm-hmm.
like it's like finding somebody to be in a relationship with. It's like it's difficult, and you have to have like, let's say, some kind of connection or spark or chemistry, because you start talking about things, and if they're not in your same,
Mm-hmm.
bandwidth, or if you don't understand each other, it can be really awkward. um, but I think what you said, why three, and why did you go ahead with that? I think I found in each one something different that they could provide me with. So one of them kind of really asked me the kind of the hard questions, maybe reflect about where I wanted to go, and another one was more like in role or in my job, how could I develop and kind of, explore different areas. And the one for Money 2020 is a very strong women in the financial industry, and she really, like, for me, she was more like this aspirational kind of person, like an example of things that she has achieved and done. So all three to me make a combination, and it takes a lot of time for you as well as
Yeah.
a mentee. So I would say take it lightly, don't go crazy,
Yeah,
but
and
but
and
it's
you've
it's been
obviously
very
you've learned
enriching.
different things from each of them, if you will. And are there things that you would say that are different in terms of what they've mentioned to you, or you know, how have they how have they each provided an example of how you navigate the current systems? And I'm assuming that all three are women. Um, okay, okay. Okay,
No,
okay. So that
actually,
makes it
no,
even
two
more
two men
interesting
and
in
a
the sense
and
that there's
a
two
and a
men.
woman, yeah. Hmm.
So, from a gender perspective, do you find that they are, do you find any differences? Let's just put it that way. Do you find any differences in their approach? Do you find any differences in how you should approach your career journey? Like, tell me a little bit more about those.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think from let's say a male perspective, I felt that they were like really practical, like do this, do that. Um, less on the I would say soft skills